We got our first glimpse of Jordan Hawkins at Pelicans practice yesterday, and with shooting like that, it's hard not to be excited. But will he get minutes as a rookie? Plus, Bol Bol on the Pelicans' radar? And what are the Pelicans looking to get out of a Jonas Valanciunas trade? It's your Thursday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Thursday, and we got a bunch of topics to cover in today's show. Jordan Hawkins, Bol Bol, and a Jonas Valanciunas trade. Summer League starts this weekend. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. And if you are, make sure you're an everydayer of a Locked On Pelicans. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about the team completely free. We've been covering everything, whether it's a Damian Lillard trade, whether it's the salary cap, moves in free agency. We've got it all. So subscribe wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube if you want to support the channel beyond just listening every single day. Comment down below on YouTube. Do me a favor too, in the comments on YouTube, is the volume on the show a little bit better? I'm still trying to dial it in. We got a new studio coming up here. It's going to sound a little echoey as I still kind of fill it out. I'm waiting on some stuff to come in, so I apologize for the slightly worse audio quality, but let me know if the volume at least is correct for y'all trying to watch or listen. You can do that on Twitter at NOLA Jake or in the comments down below on YouTube. And don't forget tomorrow, well, actually, depending on when you're listening to this, Thursday at 6 p.m. Central, we're going to do a live show. Live on the Locked On Pelicans YouTube page. It'll count as the Friday show if you listen to the podcast version, so it'll come out at midnight. But if you want to join, answer your questions, I'm going to chat with y'all. It should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. It should be on the YouTube page by the time you're listening or watching this. So make sure you subscribe so you get that notification when we go live. Should be 7 p.m. Central. So let's talk about Jordan Hawkins. He was at Pelicans practice. They were scrimmaging. And look, take it with not a grain of salt, but we don't want to build up expectations over one practice. We don't even want to build up too high expectations after one Summer League game, let alone the entirety of Summer League. But Hawkins and his shooting looks good. And it's tough not to get excited about something like that. Shooting, something the Pelicans desperately need, being bottom 3 in the league when it came to three-point attempts last season. When you look at this roster and a lot of the guys on it, they simply just don't have a ton of three-point shooters. They were 29th out of 30th, so second worst in terms of, second fewest, I should say. It's not necessarily worst. Fewest when it comes to three-point attempts. They were 15th in terms of three-point percentage. Now, they don't have guys that shoot tons of threes. Brandon Ingram is more mid-range. CJ's threes and mid-range. And then you really have Trey Murphy, and that's it. You don't have a ton of other like deep threats that are going to launch in volume. Herb Jones took 2.5 a game. It's not bad, but Trey Murphy was 6.3. CJ was 7. Over 7, and then you have Jose, only played 61 games, 4 attempts per game. You need to kind of skew that math a little bit, and that's why I think they're thinking about Jordan Hawkins. That's why they took him in the draft. That's why they like Grady Dick as well. Everyone raved about his shooting after practice, the form, the quick release, the ability to get to his spots, and there's a reason why, even though I don't think he can be an all-star level player, I was very high on the draft pick because he fits perfectly for the Pelicans, and I called him the best fit in the first round. But the question everyone's been asking is, will he get minutes? Willie Green doesn't like rookies, right, is something that I've heard a lot. I think he's going to get minutes. I think he's going to get minutes, maybe not right off the jump, but pretty soon after. If his three-point shooting is like what we saw, what we think it could be, you're going to have to put him on the court around Zion Williamson, assuming Zion Williamson isn't, say, traded for Damian Lillard. And I put that poll out on Twitter the other day. So if he's going to shoot like this, he'll get minutes because you need more three 3-pointers. And while Jose Alvarado, 4 attempts per game, he shot 33.6% from deep. Herb Jones was 33.5%, though he's shooting above 40% post-All-Star break. You need guys to shoot the 3 ball, and so it means Jordan Hawkins is going to get minutes. You also saw Herb Jones start from game 2 as a rookie. So I do think that Willie Green is willing to play rookies. Dyson Daniels was in the rotation in November, guarding guys like Luka Doncic and LeBron James. You also saw Jose Alvarado 2 seasons ago play a starring role for the Pelicans down the stretch and significantly get minutes too. So I think we've seen that Willie Green is willing to play rookies if, it makes sense. He's not going to just play them for, say, developmental purposes. And that's something to keep in mind when we talk about Bol Bol next. But if Jordan Hawkins is able to contribute and help the team win, and most importantly for him, contribute on defense, he's going to be getting minutes and it'll be just fine, I think. One of the things that he brings that only one other player does is the deep shooting, the deep threes. Trey Murphy does those 30-plus footers. Those are game changers. Those are absolutely game changers if you become a credible threat from there. And Damian Lillard is actually one of those guys too. When you can shoot from that deep, defenses have to account for you the second you cross half court, oftentimes before you cross the half court line. Remember that playoff series where they shut Damian Lillard down? The Pelicans were doubling him 36, 35, 40 feet from the basket, not letting him get any space to do what he does. It took 2 defenders to do that. And the rest of that Portland roster wasn't very good, so it allowed New Orleans to take advantage and they swept them. But imagine if you had another good roster around it. Imagine if some of those other guys were Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., let's say, or Trey Murphy too. And Jordan Hawkins is the one with the ball in his hands. They're not going to double him 30 feet from the basket. So if he brings the ball up the court, he can just take that 3. And if he makes it, okay, great. And if he does that enough, they're going to defend him up there. They're going to at least throw one body up there, and that gives you so much space. If you've got a defender 30 feet, 35 feet from the basket, and for this Pelicans team with guys who want to get in close, BI from mid-range, Zion at the rim, please give me that. Please give me that. Please do that, defenses. That's just going to open things up so much more. So if his shooting, and he was taking deep threes in practice and making them, and it's practice, almost every NBA player can do that. But I think this is a guy that can do that in games. And if he does do that in games, that opens things up in a way that we haven't seen. And the only other player that's capable of doing that is Trey Murphy. Plays a different role than what Jordan Hawkins is going to do. And then imagine if you have both of those guys on the court at the same time. The space Zion Williamson could have, assuming he's not traded, to work, I think is incredible. And just makes me very excited for what we could see in the half court from this team next season. So it's one practice. Don't freak out about it. I'm certainly not doing that, but it's tough not to get excited. And I do think Jordan Hawkins is going to get minutes right away. One guy that is in need of minutes, a new home, is Bol Bol. And I knew I was going to get asked about him the second he was waived by the Orlando Magic. And I'm not as down on him as I was before. So should the Pelicans sign him, would he play? I don't know if you're going to like the answer. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we do that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by BetterHelp. Look, sometimes life's hard, and I use BetterHelp. I've used this a lot before because I appreciate that I can just do it from home on my schedule and find a therapist that I like that works for me. Sometimes life is just hard. Things aren't going well for you. You need to figure out what's going on. Maybe you need an outsider's perspective. Maybe you need to kind of do some introspection, and it's tough to do that, and talk with someone to figure out how to change things in your life. Or maybe you just need to vent and need someone to listen to make you feel better. And that's where BetterHelp really comes in. Whatever it is you need, life doesn't have a playbook. BetterHelp can really help you improve your life. And so I'm a big believer in therapy. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, which is what I love about it. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You need to do it in the middle of the day? Great. After kind of normal working hours, they have people that have that available. So just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen. Today, into every day, we're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about the team. We'll have all the summer league talk. Don't you worry. Be watching all the games. I'm looking forward to it. Might be out watching them with you this weekend, too. If anyone's going to be anywhere, let me know. Let's chat Pelicans while the summer league games are coming on. And tomorrow, Thursday, depending on when you're listening to this, it's going to be a live show, which will count as the Friday show, 7 p.m. Central. Check out the Locked On Pelicans YouTube page for that. Subscribe, become an everydayer. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll answer your questions on there. I usually always, the way those kind of go is I have a topic for the first segment to kind of get us flowing, get us going. We'll talk about that then. Garrett Temple was waived. We'll look at that, what it means for the Pelicans. And then I'll look at the chat, interact with all y'all, and start answering your questions the second and third segments. So it should be a lot of fun. So if you have questions you want that I haven't answered on the show, come on, ask them in there. Be nice. We're going to have a great time. So I knew it. I knew it the second he was waived. And I had like 3 people text me about this too, because of course, that the second Bol Bol was waived by the Orlando Magic. People were going to want him on the Pelicans. And I get it. I'll be honest. I get it. For a while, I didn't get it. And I get it a little bit more right now. This is a 23-year-old. He'll be 24 next season, who's 7'2", and the son of Manute Bol, an NBA legend. He has not been the player people would have hoped for his first couple of seasons in the NBA. This was his 4th year the past year, and for the first 3 seasons, he was not good. He was not good. Simple as that. He was not good. But in 70 games for the Orlando Magic last year, I'll be honest, he wasn't bad. I wouldn't call him good. Maybe you would call him like good for his role, above average for the role that he was playing in 20 minutes per game or so. So I've come around on him, not a lot, but a good bit, where I don't think he should be out of the league or anything else like that right now. I will say it's a little bit telling that the Orlando Magic waived a guy making just $2.2 million, saying, nah, we don't want to pay him that. That says something. And so should the Pelicans take a flyer, right? This is a guy that, in theory, is actually a pretty decent defensive rebounder, and he's a good shot blocker. They need both of those things, right? He actually contests shots at the rim and has a pretty good block rate, especially last season. However, if you look at just the numbers from last season, they're a little bit misleading, and this is why I don't think the Pelicans should take a flyer on him or even have the ability to sign and take a flyer on Bol Bol, and it has nothing to do with the salary cap, actually. So for the first half of the season, he was good. He was good. For a role player, third big off the bench, Bol Bol was a pretty good player for the Orlando Magic. Averaged 1.2 blocks per game. But as the season went on, he struggled. His three-point shot wasn't falling as it was earlier on in the year. The rebounding numbers went down. And as the season dragged on, he was not defending nearly as well as he did in the beginning. Whether it's just the season wearing him down, whether that was teams kind of figuring him out or players upping their level of play, he really struggled the final 2-3 months of the regular season. And the early part kind of boosts his per game averages. This is a guy that still just needs time to develop. There might be some talent there. Like, he looked like he can at least be in the NBA, which was not something that I think we really saw from him for his first 3 seasons with Denver. But going to an Orlando Magic team that was, not in contention in the beginning part of the year, could give him minutes, allow him to develop and see what he has, it worked. It made a ton of sense. But then they started to get competitive late in the year, right? They're going to be a potential playoff team, play-in team in the Eastern Conference next season. And they don't really have time to develop guys anymore. And Bol Bol needs to be on a bad team where he can play and just learn and grow and develop. That's not what the Pelicans are right now. He's not a significant rotation player for a playoff team. He's not even close to that. Belongs in the NBA in some capacity, but not in a role like that. He does not fit on the Pelicans from a timeline perspective. They are competing now. And his defense left a lot to be desired as the season went on. And I think the Pelicans look at that and go, nah, okay. Would they have signed him over, Cody Zeller? Maybe. Given Zeller's 3-point-something million, you get Bol Bol for 2.2. Maybe. But I think they also just realize, you don't need to develop Cody Zeller. He's not going to go out and do some boneheaded things. And Bol Bol still does that. There's talent there. I'm higher on him than before. But he just doesn't kind of fit what the Pelicans are trying to do, where they're not actively trying to take on like a very developmental player and let him figure it out, because they just can't do that. That's why if Jordan Hawkins is playing good defense, he'll play. But if he isn't, if he looks like he's a more developmental player and needs time, like he's not going to get minutes for this team. But I don't think that's Jordan Hawkins right now. Unfortunately for Bol Bol, that is. Could you get him and stash him on a two-way? I don't even know if he can sign a two-way at this point. Or put him in the G League, like on an Exhibit 10 deal. Like, sure, that sounds great. But that doesn't mean that he's going to be playing for the team in the NBA. And, this is then a multi-year thing to maybe see if he develops into a rotation-worthy guy for a playoff team at age 25, 26. So he'd be like 2 years away, 3 years away from kind of having the role that people want to see him in right now. I'm higher on him than I was before, but I just don't think it makes sense from that. If I were Bol Bol, I wouldn't want to come to New Orleans. I'd want to go to a team that was rebuilding, trying to kind of figure it out, and it's like, oh, I'll get a ton of minutes there, and I can just do my thing. The Washington Wizards, right, would make a ton of sense, or something like that for him. A team that's really trying to see if they have anything there, doesn't truly have a center that they need to try and develop, which rules a team out like Charlotte, the Detroit Pistons. Who else could take a chance on him, right? Utah doesn't need him. Dallas maybe could, but they're trying to compete. Like, there's just not a ton of teams that I'm looking at that are like, oh yeah, developmental center, that'll work for us. There's a place somewhere in the NBA for him. It's just not on New Orleans right now. And that's even if they move on from Jonas Valanciunas, something I think they're still trying to do. So what are the Pelicans hoping to accomplish in a Jonas Valanciunas trade? What's the goal of moving on from Jonas Valanciunas? Is it just a money thing? Is there more to it? And I think the answer could be both. Let's talk about that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, like no one else is, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. The #1 Pelicans podcast, completely free. No Locked On Pelicans Plus, no Locked On Pelicans Prime. All you got to do to support the channel, become an everydayer. And shout out to you if you're part of that club already. I love when people come in the comments on YouTube and go, I'm an everydayer. Heck yeah. You know what's going on with the team then. Tell your friends about the show. And if you want to support the channel beyond just listening, comment down below on YouTube. So the Pelicans waived Garrett Temple. $5.4 million would have gone through over the weekend on the 7th, I think is the day they moved his guarantee date back to. And the reason they moved that back is they were trying to kind of see if they could trade him, aggregate him with some other salary and bring in a player that makes more. In the NBA, when you make trades, if you're over the salary cap, you need to have the salary match. For the most part, they've changed some of the rules on that. It's more complicated this year, but actually gives you a little bit more leeway too. So they were hoping to do that. And if they're waiving him on the 5th, when this was on the 7th, I think they realize there's no chance that they're going to be able to move him in a trade with Jonas Valanciunas. It gives you about a little over $21 million in salary, so you can bring back someone in that range, let's say. They aren't able to find a deal. Jared Allen being the main target, I think that most people would like in that range. So does that change what the Pelicans do that they're looking to do with a Jonas Valanciunas trade? And I don't know if the answer is yes to that. I think if they make a Jonas Valanciunas trade, and I don't think it looks likely at this point, and we can talk more about this tomorrow if you want to give me your trade ideas during the live show. I think if they move Jonas, they're doing it to save salary while still upgrading the roster. If they want to just simply save some money, dumping Kira Lewis Jr. and his contract is the easiest way to do that. Just get him somewhere. Maybe you have to give up an asset. Maybe you can get a second-round pick or two. That would be great back for him. And it kind of solves, I think, that problem for the Pelicans. I'm trying to see what Kira Lewis Jr. makes next year. $4.7 million is what I think that number is. Oh, 5.7. I am incorrect. $5.7 million this coming season. You got to move that. So they'll look to do that if they really want to just dump salary. That might be easier than trying to find a home for Jonas Valanciunas. Sorry, as I hit my chair there, and bring back less money. So I think if they move Jonas Valanciunas, it's to find the right center. Like, they do like him. It's not like they hate Jonas Valanciunas and want to kind of shove him out and be like, you're terrible, don't be here. It's just more, you don't play him, you don't close with him. Can you use that money in a smarter way? And I think the answer to that is just unequivocally yes. Simple as that. Has nothing to do with him as a player, really, and just more the role and the coaching staff with all of it. So I think he might end up staying on the roster because they have other ways that they can shed that salary and free up some space. And so I think what they're hoping to do is upgrade the roster. I think they view him as a good player, give up a good player with some other stuff, get a better player back. And that's what I think they're hoping to do with the Jonas Valanciunas trade. Or if they can find a deal that makes a ton of sense and an equivalent center at less money, which is not easy to do because they would like a center. I don't think you want to run Larry Nance Jr. there full time. Zion's not ready for it. Herb at the 5 lineups are intriguing, but haven't been very good. That there's a need for Jonas Valanciunas. So if you could upgrade the roster, you do it. I don't think they'll just dump him for salary purposes when you could do that with Kira Lewis Jr. as well, even though then you need to fill some of these roster spots, and that gets a little bit dicey because then it puts you back into the luxury tax or pretty close to it. They're in some trouble and they need to do some more tweaking. So if they find the right deal, they'll take it. Otherwise, they'll just dump Kira Lewis Jr. and get some guys on the minimum, and we'll probably end up calling it a day. Malik Beasley got a $2.7 million deal. Kira Lewis Jr. makes 5.7. There's a significant difference there, and you can probably get guys that are better suited for the rotation and give you more production than Kira Lewis Jr., whose just career was, derailed by that knee injury that he suffered almost 2 years ago now. So let me know what you think the team is going to do over the next couple of weeks as they shore up the roster. How excited are you for Summer League? And don't forget, live show Thursday at 7 p.m. And let me know if the volume on today's episode of Locked On Pelicans was good. Let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This has been Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll see y'all Thursday at 7 p.m. Central.